great to see so many faces joining us this afternoon. All right, so I'm Michelle Fauntleroy. I'm one of the board members of Maryland Federation of Art. I'm happy to be with you today. And today I'm going to introduce Richard Nieworth, who's going to then introduce our juror for this American Landscapes show. So Richard, off to you, please.
Yes, okay. Well, first of all, I really want to thank everyone for attending our virtual reception of the American Landscape Show. And I did want to mention that we had 700 pieces altogether submitted for the exhibition, of which 57 were chosen. So those of you that have chosen are quite honored with exhibiting your work. And I do want to introduce our juror, who is Sue Frank. Sue Frank is curator at the Phillips Collection and specializing in European and American modernism. She earned her PhD in 1996, joining the staff at the Phillips the following year. At the Phillips Collection, she curated numerous traveling exhibitions that showcase the museum's European and American collection for domestic and international audiences in places like Italy, Spain, Germany, Japan, and South Korea. And Sue also has published several books and essays, including American Impressionism, paintings of light and modern landscape, David Smith's Invents, and Made in the USA, American Art from the Phillips Collection. So currently, Sue is co-organizing with the Art Gallery of Ontario, Picasso showing, which includes Painting the Blue Period, an international loan exhibit that will be opened in the Phillips Collection in February of 2022. So I guess with that, I'll turn it over to Sue, who will be awarding prizes.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here and participating. I really enjoy working with the MFA, the Circle Gallery. This is the second show I've juried for you all. And I just really want to say that there were almost 700 works, as Richard just mentioned. It was an incredible visual wealth of images that I had to go through, and making choices was not so simple. And so I just want to congratulate everybody, all of the, I think there are 55 artists that are in the exhibition. And, you know, kudos to all of you, because it was a hard challenge to kind of reduce that large number of works down to this rather small group. So congratulations to every one of you. You know, I have this curatorial hat on all the time because I'm a museum professional. And so when I approached this challenge, I, you know, wanted to shape an exhibition that I thought would capture the breadth of what American landscape can be understood to be, what it can encompass. So the subjects, you know, in the submissions and those that I chose for the exhibition include urban views, they include rural landscapes, the beach, the desert, roads and other infrastructure, parks, forests, mountains, valleys, a whole kind of spectrum of what you might expect to be the American landscape. And so I was looking for views that from around the country, and a variety of materials, and different perspectives, interpretations. And I always respond best to examples that favor the formal elements of design and composition and give a particular point of view that balances, you know, individual artistic vision with command of the material and the subject as well. So the scale of the works, I tried to look carefully because I like to have a variety of works, large and small. So there are some very small format works in the exhibition and others that are larger. And, I think that can be powerful when you're in the gallery. Everything gets kind of reduced to a similar size digitally, but in the gallery, it's such a different experience. So I think that the 57 works that are in this show really reflect a broad range of expression that reveals the kind of robustness that different perspectives of American landscape can take. And so I hope everybody has a chance to go to the Circle Gallery and actually see this exhibition, as well as looking at it online. Because I was there on Wednesday this last week to go and actually see the work. And so it gives you a really different experience of it, as you can expect. So let's get started. So we have 5 honorable mentions today. And so the first one goes to Neil. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Dubilbus. It's called One Way. It's a mixed media work that is rather small, as you can see, 9 by 6 inches. I really responded to this because it had such a kind of interesting way of kind of taking the city apart and putting it back together again. If you see this one-way sign that kind of bifurcates just off center there in the foreground, right behind is a photograph, of a person kind of leaning against a wall with a lot of graffiti. And so, the kind of foreground is this kind of stable, horizontal plane. And then this kind of fractured jumble of buildings and parts of buildings behind. And I just thought it was a really successful collage of the city and how it is not a pristine place, shall we say. So Chris Farhood, this End of Day, High Point, New Jersey. It's also a small painting in oil. But at the Phillips collection, if you all are familiar with the collection of American art there, you know that Arthur Dove is one of the really standard bearers of the American modernism that we have. And there's qualities of this work by Chris Farhood that really reminded me of the things I love about Arthur Dove. This is about the end of the day. And one of the aspects of the way that Chris has constructed this composition is that the clouds in the sky, have this kind of soft rust color, but they really kind of come down right next to the pasture, and it's like one becomes the other. They have this same kind of billowing quality to them that, makes one, as substantial or insubstantial as we might interpret it as the other. And I just found that to be, charming and a very kind of different way of looking at rural landscape in the US. And then I just also really responded to these black and white cows in the foreground, and then that black and white cow that's just kind of plopped there in the left ground. So this was a work that really spoke about kind of classic ideas about the American landscape with a bit of a different interpretation that made me think back to this very singular voice of American modernism, Arthur Dove. Cindy Griselda, this fiber work, it struck me that this is another aspect of what I was trying to achieve in picking works, is that different materials give us different experience, of course. And looking closely at this, it's very hard to see in this digital image. And but looking at it closely online, you could see that these fabrics, look to be, all delicately patterned, that she has put together in these horizontal bands and created this very interesting landscape. But one of the things I really thought was very interesting as well is that plane that's there in the just about below the center line of the composition really is kind of a tour de force that gives the sense of three-dimensional depth to this work, so that it doesn't read just vertically. And these colors were just so kind of beautifully put together with these patterns that I just thought it was really a very remarkable work, and something, unexpected to see a fiber work that took on this idea of a kind of traditional landscape view, but with a different twist to it. So this really kind of struck my heart, and I just thought it was a really wonderful opportunity to embrace a work that had a bit of a different materials, but clearly an artist who is in command of those materials and working with this idea of the American landscape. So I don't know if Cindy is on this Zoom call or not.
I don't see Cindy, but Amelia made a comment that she loves the color mixture in this one and the other two as well. She enjoyed those. So it's nice to see comment from the audience here.
Yeah, I know. I think that this is one of the things that struck me when I was going through the submissions, is that, some of these works were just really so exceptional in the way they kind of worked with color. Now, one of the things I will say about all the submissions that came through, that there were probably half of the submissions were photography. And I don't know if people, if it's, I'm sure it's all now so easy with smartphones, the kind of point and shoot opportunities that we have. And so I will say that I tried to put a number of the different examples of photography into the final selection, because having more than half of the submissions be either black and white or color photography, it just seemed that they were a kind of critical part of the works that needed to be considered. And so Beth Altman's photograph of these New York City buildings really struck me for a variety of reasons. I love the fact that, you look at this and in one way you think kind of it's a collage of this very modern building on the right, and that maybe it's black and white, but then you look closer and you realize it's color. And this comparison of old and new, a very modern structure with the older parts of New York that are, late 19th, early 20th century buildings. And these different patterns in the two buildings really are so kind of different from one another, and yes, complementary to one another. The rectangular shapes that are in the older building on the two buildings on the left, and this kind of very flat vertical patterning, linear patterning in the one on the right. And it was just this really very handsome composition. And I just really fell in love with it for all of these reasons, and thought that it really was an exceptional kind of visual voice that she had here.
Thank you very much. And I actually was drawn to it for the same reasons that you mentioned, the contrast between the old and the new, and the color palettes, and the composition of each. So, and it was taken with an SLR. This is not an iPhone picture.
You know, you can never tell anymore.
Yeah.
So it's always something that I find, you know, interesting to ask different artists, you know, what is the, you know, what are they using to take their photographs? And so I just love the way you've cropped it. It's just
Thank
really,
you very much.
yes.
Yes.
And I'd love to see it bigger, a bigger format.
A bigger format. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Like, what are you thinking?
Well, I don't know. I always think of like exhibition formatting to be something about, you know, 24 by 30, that sort of thing. So, you know, just has, you know, a more physical presence on the wall. And you have such a kind of wonderful photograph here. And the more I look at it, you see, I look at those windows in the older building. And, you know, I think about Edward Hopper and those kind of empty windows in the buildings in his paintings of the city. And so it's just this wonderful kind of dialogue that you've set up.
Well, thank you very much. And I really appreciate your comments.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm happy you're on the call. And so I guess we go on next. John Hanou, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, or Hanou. You know, I fell in love with this photograph when I saw it online. And I fell in love with it again in the gallery. And as I'm working, you know, on this Picasso project of mine, the thing about this photograph, here it is, it's like a round barn. It's the cupola of a round barn in the winter. Just reminded me of these church cupolas that of churches in Europe, especially some that Picasso was doing when he was very young and living, you know, in Barcelona before he became well known. And so it just has this kind of mystery. I think that John really has a tremendous eye, and the way he's placed this cupola in the center of his composition. And then, you know, you get this sense that you can see some of the landscape protruding through the snow in the foreground. So it's like, you know, it must drop off on the hillside for this round barn that he's captured in the distance. And the blues on the snow were so kind of rich and noticeable in the photograph. It's a bit, bleeds out a bit here in the digital. But the other thing that I want to mention about this is when I saw it in the gallery, I originally thought, well, maybe it needed to be a bit larger, but John has put it in a white mat with a white frame. And so it just kind of gives it this expansion on the wall. And then it asks you to look closer at it, to look more closely. And I just thought this was a really very sophisticated and very successful photograph. And if John's on the call, if you want to speak about this work and, you know, give us more insight where in Illinois you took it and what kind of a day it was.
Yeah, I'm here. Meeting. So my wife, Lucy, is sitting off to my right here, helped me get it set up. Well, anyway, for those of you that don't know me, I am the round barn expert of the US. And I've written one book published by Purdue University Press here last September on Indiana's round barns. And I'm doing one in Wisconsin and Illinois. Now, this particular day where I shot this is up in northwestern Illinois in Stevenson or Ogle County. And this day, let's see, I was doing the photography when Joe Biden was getting inaugurated. So the wind was blowing 30 miles an hour. And I can tell you the sun was setting And I had a magical 1 hour where I was able to photograph a couple barns in this kind of weather. And if you look closely at the photograph, you really can't tell in this, but the wind was blowing so hard and the snow was icy, but you had about 1 foot to 2 feet of snow just blowing sideways. And it was blowing so hard, I couldn't use my tripod. I got against my car, zoomed in. And when I saw this, I go, wow, you know, and so this is what I did. And if you actually see the barn in real life, it is just a magical, beautiful barn. So that's the story. And thank you, Sue, for picking this.
Well, I think you've given a tease to everybody. We all want to see what the rest of the building looks like, but knowing the kind of conditions that you were shooting this in, it's, even more fabulous.
So thank you.
Yes, congratulations.
Thanks.
Okay. So now, juror's choice. I had a hard time with these, just as like I did with the honorable mention, because so many of the works in this show are really, wonderful. And this particular watercolor, it's, by Michael Katarba. I think that's how you pronounce his name. If I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, I hope I'm not mutilating it. I see Michael's on. I really fell in love with this watercolor when I saw it online, and I fell in love with it again when I saw it in the gallery this last week. It's really beautiful. You have this incredible mastery of this medium. It has this quality of being both abstract and realistic, but this purple and all the kind of variations of purple that you've put into this, are really luscious. It's very beautiful. The way you've handled the building gives it such a kind of both abstract, flat quality on the dark side, and then, kind of bronze it out to make it more sculptural in that part that faces and is lighter lit. But this play of the purple and these various oranges is really beautiful. And your brushwork is really, there's like a delicacy to it for those shadows on the front of the building and in the trees. It's really just a very handsome work, and it really speaks to your command of the watercolor medium. Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
I'll just say some background. My wife and I enjoy going to Abiquiu in New Mexico. We've been there 3 times, and I was just really intrigued by the light on the trees. Those are cottonwoods, and they were in autumn glory, and they were backlit, or actually lit from, this is actually the Abiquiu Inn. And I was just out because there's a lot of stars out. I always go outside, and so I went out and took a bunch of photographs, and I actually worked from a photograph for this, and that's pretty much about it. It just was the idea about Abiquiu is that it has lots of tradition and history, and the Abiquiu Inn has tried to emulate adobe architecture, and it had some very nice shapes going on. So I responded to that. Well, thank you.
Yes, well, congratulations. But I love this kind of reflective quality that you've put into the trees that are above the inn itself. And again, it's like, the closer you look, the more kind of interesting your brushwork is, and how much detail you've put into this particular painting. It's
Okay.
really, it's very handsome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
This is an oil by Chuck Williams, Ocean Beach Cottages. It's a bit larger than many of the other works in the show. I fell in love with this one also when I saw it online, and it held up very handsomely when I saw it in the gallery. It's such a soft tonality that he's using. It's kind of like looking through mist. But the structure of this painting is one of the things that really spoke to me. This way that the banding that he has created with the beach and the wall, and then the pedestrians sitting on the wall or either walking on the pathway, then the row of foliage, and then the row of the cottages with the trees behind. There is this kind of stillness to it. This kind of soft color of the kind of white sandy color of the grays, and then that row of red orange shrubbery that bifurcates that wall from the cottages, and that play of the architectonic quality of those cottages and those peaked gables on top of each, and then those windows and doors. And I'm always fascinated by how artists approach the idea of windows and doors. It's something that the idea of windows, of course, is something that artists, European and American artists, have explored, for centuries. And at the Phillips, we always are, we're looking at works by Matisse and by Richard Diebenkorn, the great California Abex painter. And so I'm always fascinated by how artists kind of handle that aspect when they're doing these kind of architectonic structures. But I also just, the kind of isolated figure under the umbrella on the beach, the two figures about to walk off on the left, and then the two figures sitting on the wall. It just has so many kind of qualities that I think really elevate it, make it a really handsome painting, and one that really kind of speaks to that kind of classic American going to the beach. And so I don't know if Chuck Williams is on the call or not. I think he's from Alexandria. So I don't know if he's, on the Zoom with us or not. Well, it doesn't appear that he is, but, so perhaps we'll go on. But this is a work that's just as handsome in the gallery as it appears to be online. And so this is another photograph. This is, where I say there were so many photographs that were submitted in this American landscapes. And so James Slazak, I think he's from the New York area. He's not a local Maryland artist. And so I love this play of abstraction and reality that you can see in this photograph. I also like this idea that he has captured here about the erosion of this road and the landscape next to it, that somehow the road is kind of being eroded by the environment. It seems that it was a black and white photograph that he has worked with, I don't know, perhaps Photoshop to create this blue sky effect in the puddle, and then the yellow stripe that goes down the road. But I just thought the abstraction of it, the verticality of it, where it seems to go and rise up vertically, and yet those electrical poles, pull us back deep into that landscape view, that it just combines a lot of really wonderful things into this one image. And so I don't know if James Slazak is on the Zoom call or not.
I'm here.
You are.
I am.
Well, Tell me about how you made this photograph.
Okay, I took a walk along, I live on the east end of Long Island,
Mhm.
live in Hampton Bays. I live across the street from Shinnecock Bay. 4 miles to the south is the Atlantic Ocean, which is to the left of the image. And there's a stretch of road that's about 3 miles long, which is just ocean, beach, dune, the road, marsh, and the bay. And it's just lovely. The day before, it had rained heavily. So there was a puddle on the side of the road.
Mhm.
The sky was the color that you see in the puddle. What I did was I selected the yellow line. I took it out of the image to put it aside. I went back, selected the puddle, and then made everything else black and white and put the yellow line back in. And I like that space between the abstract and representational. That's where I like to be.
Yeah,
That's really it.
it's a really successful, work, James. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much for
Yeah.
choosing me.
Yeah, it's really struck me right at when I went through the submissions, and then it was just as striking in the gallery when I saw it this last week.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm fascinated. I'm glad to know how you made it.
Glad I could tell you.
Yeah. Okay, and the next one then. Yeah, so this is the other photograph I chose for a Juror's Award. And it's a very different kind of photograph than the one that James Slazak just talked about and that we saw. This by George Sass, The Solitary Hiker. It too struck me. There were a number of submissions that George Sass sent in, and I chose this one because it again has this kind of, there's a little bit of a surrealist quality to it that I really liked. This hiker, I'm assuming if George was on the call, he can tell us if this person is someone he knew and had posed there. I love the way he's cropped the composition so that we don't see where the water comes from, that it just seems to kind of rain down like out of a faucet. And this hiker gives us such insight into the scale of this landscape that we're looking at. And it's just really an incredibly beautifully photographed work. And so is George on the call?
Yes, I am.
George, can you talk to us about this photograph and how you made it and who that hiker is?
Well, he's a fellow photographer. I was out in the Columbia River Gorge for a magazine assignment, and I had a couple of days to myself. And went hiking in the Columbia River and came across this photographer who I happen to know. And I saw this beautiful waterfall. It was very misty and almost raining at the time. So I used a polarizing filter to reduce the glare on the green foliage. But the problem was that there was no sense of scale. And that could have been a very small waterfall in a stream. And as you can see, it's a very vast scene. So I asked him, he had this orange coat on, and I asked him to put his camera bag down and climb up on that rock so I could get a sense of scale. And he can't take any credit for this, but I will. But the orange coat to me just really made the photograph. But thank you very much, Susan. I appreciate your comments.
Right. Well, your colleague and his orange coat really were the kind of key to the success of this photograph. There's no two ways around it. It's just really terrific. And that contrast of the green and the orange and that beautiful charcoal gray is really wonderful. So
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Susan.
And so I think there's one more. Yes, so this may surprise everybody, but this just speaks to my personal things in my past and also my love of watercolor and abstraction at the same time. So this is by Ray Goodrow. It's called By the Tracks. And you know, I saw this in the gallery this Wednesday, and it was more substantive than I had thought it might be. You know, he used this, you know, relatively large sheet, and he filled it and with this really beautiful watercolor. It's so different than Michael Cortaba's watercolor. It's just a very different approach to this medium. And, you know, it's these veils of color. And this is, it's called By the Tracks. And when I say it just speaks to certain things about my past and my life, is that, you know, I have family members who worked for the railroad once upon a time. My husband's father worked for the railroad. In fact, my husband's father worked for it. You can see the initials DNSF on the train that's going through here. That's the Burlington Northern Santa Fe. And what he, as many times as we've all been on the train, probably between Washington and New York, and you see all of those areas along the track that are unattractive, you know, in the inner city areas that are really just ignored, that live by the tracks, industrial areas and others. And Ray Goodrow has turned it into this really beautiful, delicate painting. You know, this like the kind of abstraction of where he works with like rectangular shapes. He uses line very delicately and judiciously to kind of tie those different parts of the composition together. And then these beautiful kind of veils of purple, blue, kind of rosy colors, and he uses the white on the page very thoughtfully. And so I couldn't get away from this. I just really was taken by it. And so I wanted to give it the kind of significance I felt it deserved. And so I don't know if Ray Goodrow is on the Zoom call or not. And, you know, I'm sorry he's not, because I would like to ask him more about it. But I think this is, you know, the last of the awards. And so I would be, you know, if anybody has any comments, I would be happy to hear them. But I want to encourage everybody who can to go to the Circle Gallery in Annapolis and see the show on the wall, because it's really changes the experience of these works, as we all know, and really gives a kind of larger picture of all the different aspects of what the American landscape can be.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. And that the show is up until September 18th. So you definitely have time to stop by the Circle Gallery and see it. And also if perhaps any artist on the call right now has a question about their work and maybe what Sue thinks of it or has some comments, feel free to speak up. We have a little bit of time.
I had a hard time limiting myself to 10. Was,
I'm sure.
you know, not simple. I had a hard time getting the 700 reduced down to 57, and then to choose 10 out of that was not easy.
Yeah, thank you for your work, and your comments today are really insightful. It's wonderful to hear your selections and then also hear, you know, the artists and how they have created this work. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I would also like to add that I am really excited about the show, and I'm really responding to the kinds of selections that Sue made, and the comments that she made provided insights into the works. It was very helpful. So thank you very much, Sue, for both your comments and for selecting a great show.
May I ask a question?
Sure, yes.
How do you go about, as a juror, if you get 700 entries, how do you go about, and especially if you're limited to 50? I find that fascinating in itself.
Well, you're not the only one who finds it fascinating. Because it's like, it's like when I said, well, so how many, submissions are there? And, I think it was like 689 or something like that. It was like, oh my, it's like, so it's just, I kind of made one, look through everything to kind of get an idea. And then it's just like tidbits, going through parts of it repeatedly. Many artists submitted more than one work, and the MFA limits to choosing no more than 2 by an individual artist. So if you have an artist who's submitted, I don't know, Michelle may have to correct me. I don't know if it's 5 or 6 is the maximum number that an artist can submit.
It's
So
6.
sometimes 6. So sometimes, you have an artist, you think, oh, I like that and I like that, and it's like, oh, I need to choose 1 or maybe 2. And so then you have to kind of start kind of thinking more judiciously. And the other thing that I try to do is that I also look at the dimensions, because everything that you see digitally all looks the same scale, and things are not. And so I was very much trying to find works that had a variety of mediums, so that there was like watercolor, oil, there's a very small work that's collaged together of wood, that's of Mesa Verde in the Four Corners area of Colorado. And, just things that would be unusual that could capture your interest, in the gallery. And so it was really trying to bring that diversity to bear, and going through the submissions repeatedly and trying to make sure that what the choices were all also kind of held together visually as a group, so that it was a show that had a kind of structure to it. So I hope that answers your question a little bit.
It does. It does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'd
Any-
like to ask you a question, if I could jump in here. I'd like
David.
to ask you a question.
Sure.
Yes? Okay. Well, Susan, I really enjoyed your comments too on all the pieces. I enjoy how you find it intriguing the way people are thinking of the landscape and constructing an image of it. I wondered if you could give me some comments on the piece that I submitted that you chose, What Remains. It's the beach scene.
The title sounds familiar, David, but I'm not. Oh, yes. Okay. I know your photograph. Yes.
The video.
Yes.
Yes.
I really liked your photograph. This is, this kind of photograph of the beach is pretty common, but I think the fact that you used a portrait format made it interesting. But one of the things I really liked about your photograph was that that surf that's there on the beach in the foreground, the white surf, is so 3-dimensional, and it's like I could reach out and touch it in your photograph. You did a really wonderful job of kind of capturing that physicality of that surf that comes in and stays on top of the beach. And so I thought you really did a beautiful composition there, of a subject that, has been, part of photography, for a long time. You see it a lot, but I think you gave it a fresh twist.
Thank you. Yes, I do enjoy vertical landscapes, and I like to be able to bring the viewer into the image and draw them in all the way to the farthest reach of the image, and have something interesting to look at each level of each level.
Yeah, I think that what you did with the the surf here in the foreground is just, I was really struck by how, it's like I could see the molecules of it actually. It was really pretty wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Are
I
you a
love it.
photographer? Are you a
Yes.
photographer?
Yes, primarily a photographer, and constructing images most often. This is from previous period. And I enjoy just the intimacy of the landscape. I'm trying to convey you experience what's right in front of you, but you are witness to that thing that's fascinating you in its environment. It's in its larger environment. So trying to bring all that together.
Well, you produced a very nice photograph, David.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your comments. Always appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sue. Anybody else have a question?
Yeah, good. This is Alan Kolnick. Could I ask a question about my submission? Just a moment, I'm going to try and turn on my video. Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. By the way, I visited the gallery on Friday with my wife, and I thought it was wonderful. I thought the exhibition was really wonderful. So I would be interested, Sue, just in your comments about this. I'm an amateur photographer. I've been doing photography for many, many years, and have been exhibited in many places, including newspapers. But that wasn't my real job. So now I can pay more attention to it. And I would value, I've never had any training or coaching, everything I've sort of learned myself the hard way. And I'd be very interested in your comments about the picture.
Well, I loved your photograph, Alan. I thought it was really wonderful. And, I don't know whether you're using a sophisticated camera to go and do your work, but this is very handsomely composed, and you've captured that mirror image, so beautifully in this photograph. It was really, it was very, very nicely done. And I really love this kind of color that you captured in it as well, this kind of the blues and the purples and the pinks. It's a very seductive photograph. And I think if you keep working with this, you've got real opportunities in front of you.
Well, thank you. I'll just point out for anyone who goes to the gallery, if you look very carefully at the tree there, you'll see a little white head. And that is one of the famous eagles of Conewigo, sitting there in the morning waiting to go fishing. That site is famous for the bald eagles there. And you can see him, there's a little white spot in the upper part of the tree. All I'll say is we were planning, I was with a friend, we wanted to photograph the eagles from the other side of the river, and the place was so full, we couldn't get in basically. And so we drove around the other side, and I got this much more interesting picture, I think, than just another eagle photograph. So I was very pleased with it.
Well, I'm glad you pointed out that there's an eagle in the tree,
Yeah.
One thing, this is one thing that that I would just mention for all photographers is that think about the scale you print in. That sometimes there's certain works that would be well served by something that's like more than just the standard size.
Yeah.
So you can pick out more of these extraordinary details like the one of the eagle, because I confess, Alan, I didn't see the eagle.
It's very small. Thank you.
Yes.
Richard, are you raising your hand?
Yes, yes. I
Hi
would,
there. Oh, sorry.
I very much thank Sue for her work in selecting the pictures for this exhibition. But I'd really like to ask her a little bit more about the project that she's working on, Picasso's Blue Period. Could you tell us more about that?
Sure, I'm happy to do that because I hope you all come to the Phillips next spring. We open on February 26th. This is a project that began in our conservation laboratory. And the exhibition is really rooted in these exceptional conservation studies that have been done on the one Blue Period painting that's in the Phillips collection from 1901. It's called the Blue Room. And then our partner, the Art Gallery of Ontario, has two Blue Period pictures, one from 1902, 1903, and they're both painted in Barcelona. And so both of our institutions have engaged with very detailed scientific studies on our paintings. Under the Blue Room at the Phillips is a portrait of an unknown man, a full portrait that appears to be a finished painting. We've been able to confirm that it's by Picasso and to date it to the summer of 1901, probably around July. And I say that because that has helped us give a more firm date to the painting that you see on the surface, the Blue Room. And the Art Gallery of Ontario, there are paintings underneath both of their pictures as well. There's a painting on the back of one of their, a landscape underneath one of their paintings, the 1902 painting. And then we discovered that Picasso had changed the position of the female figure's hand and hidden it under a robe where it had been visible before. And so these scientific studies have given new information to us to kind of look at the Blue Period with new eyes, to think about motifs that Picasso was working with repeatedly, how he took particular poses and other motifs and kind of revisited them over time, changed them, and thus changed the meaning of these works. And so this, we have, at the Phillips, we'll have about 50 paintings by Picasso, plus works on paper and sculpture. And then we will have some comparative works that will be able to contextualize the Picasso works. We'll have some work by Honoré Daumier, by Auguste Rodin, Puvis de Chavannes, Degas, Toulouse-Lautrec, that were all artists that were important to Picasso during this early period. And then we take motifs that we found that are like in the Blue Room, it's the bather, the idea of the toilette, the woman taking care of her hair or bathing, that are ideas that go through into the next period that's called the Rose Period. And so we have what we call the coda to the exhibition, which takes some of these themes and how he handles them in the years 1905 and 1906. So it's an exhibition that really works with both science and art history together.
Wow, that sounds wonderful. That's all I can say, because I like a lot of people, Picasso's Blue Period is just, it's a period in his oeuvre that really has fascinated me, and I've loved it for, since I was an undergraduate. Yeah.
Well, this really looks at those, a number of those Blue Period works and tries to give them context. And I'll just say to all of you that, because some of you may be scientists or engineers, I know by training, is that we work very carefully with the National Gallery of Art's Conservation Department, and they have a chief scientist there who's a physicist, who has an instrument who can look multispectrally at paintings so that you don't have to take physical samples, but you can see beneath the surface image and also understand about materials. So John Delaney is his name, and he's working with technology that is part of the NASA project, and like the satellites and the rovers to Mars. So it's like bringing that kind of sophisticated scientific technology to bear on paintings, two-dimensional works.
Wow, that's fantastic. When is this show going to be, Sue?
It opens at the Phillips February 26th in next spring.
Okay,
And
great.
it goes through June 12th. So, I'll make sure you all kind of get, information. It's an opportunity to kind of see that period of Picasso up close. We've got loans from Japan, from Europe, and from other American museums. And so we've really brought together an exceptional group of paintings for everyone to kind of, see for one of those few occasions. There hasn't been a Blue Period show in Washington for over 25 years.
Wow.
Not since.
That's right. There's one at the National Gallery a while ago, right?
1997.
Isn't that right? Up there. I remember that. Wow.
Wow,
Well, thank
I
you
know.
for sharing that with us. Appreciate it. And we'll look forward to that in February. But in the meantime, we'll all stop by the MFA Circle Gallery and see the
Please.
American landscapes and all this wonderful work. And Sue, thank you again for all of your insights and your work as a juror. You did a wonderful job, and we really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
And I'm just want to thank everybody at the MFA Circle Gallery. I mean, all of you are fantastic. Laura was a wonderful person to work with, at the Circle Gallery. And it's always a pleasure to work with you all.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura, for all your work, and Richard Nieworth for joining in as the chair, and everyone for attending. So we appreciate it.
Congratulations to all of you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sue. It was lovely to have you.
Yeah, terrific.
Thank
I'm glad
you.
to meet you all virtually.
All right. Thanks so much. Well, we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you again.
All right. Bye, guys.